This episode is brought to you by Zencastr. Zencastr is the #1 tool for all podcasters. You can record high-fidelity audio between remote locations and get studio-quality sound. Go to Zencastr.com and use coupon code THATENTERTAINS for 20% off for 3 months or 20% off an annual plan.
Everything is Awesome is part of CoreTempArts, a podcast network featuring pop culture, TV, movie, and geek podcasts. Check out some of our other shows, like TV Ate My Brain, Let's Chat with Revelin Friends, and Podstalgic at CoreTempArts.com.
Awesome. Just tell people they're awesome and mean it.
Awesome.
Awesome. Awesome.
Did you have an awesome time? Did you drink awesome shooters and listen to awesome music and then just sit around and soak up each other's awesomeness?
Awesome. 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 That was awesome. You guys are awesome.
No.
You're awesome.
No.
You are awesome.
Sir, you are awesome. Seriously.
Awesome. Awesome. Awesome.
Everything is awesome.
Welcome to this week's edition of Everything is Awesome. I am your host, Kip, and this is the show where we sit down and talk to awesome people about awesome things. And this week is a little off the beaten path. This is going to be a abnormal episode today. We're not going to have a guest. It's just going to be me sitting here talking on my own. And it's something that I think we're going to start doing every year. Something that I'm going to call State of the Pod. That's right, State of the Podcast Address. I think I've seen other shows do it. Maybe they do it more as a written format. But this will be at least this year, it's going to be considered a normal episode, part of our normal lineup. And I would normally try to get this out on July 1st of every year. And now, while that's not the anniversary to Everything is Awesome, it is the anniversary to my podcasting career. As of July 1st, 2018, that is my 11th year podcasting. So I think we'll release this episode every July 1st as part of the State of the Pod address, where we'll kind of talk about everything that's going on with Everything is Awesome, and some other things that we're going to talk about today. I teased a big announcement. We'll get to that in a second. Just as a reminder, love that you guys come to this show and listen. You spend anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour and a half or longer at times. Hopefully it's an average of an hour is always the goal, but sometimes a little longer. And you spend that time with us. You could literally be doing anything. There's tons of podcasts out there, and you choose to spend that hour or so with us. And I really do appreciate that. As you know, you can always support this show by going to iTunes and leaving a 5-star rating and review. Those 5-star rating and reviews, with Apple's math, helps us get in front of more people's ears. It raises our ranking throughout the iTunes charts, and then people are going to see it on the charts, and then more people listen, the more people are leaving more reviews, and the higher we rank, and the more that happens, the more that we're recognized by iTunes and Google Play and all these other fun places, and it will help us just kind of keep on going on. It makes us feel really good. It makes me feel, I'm the only one hosting the show, so seeing those positive comments really kind of just, is a big ego booster, a big positive shot of energy for me to start my day when I look at those iTunes reviews. So thank you to people that have done that. If you haven't done it yet, please do so. It's a big way to help the show. Word of mouth recommendations is another great way that you can help this show. Telling a friend, playing it in the car with a friend, you're going on a road trip, you play your favorite episode of Everything is Awesome, and hopefully you guys enjoy it together, and then the cycle continues with your friend. And of course, you can also help us in a monetary way by going to patreon.com/thatentertains. In theory, that will be 100% live come August 1st. We'll also get to that date in a second when it comes to some other announcements. But our Patreon, I've been working pretty hard on getting it to look the way I want it to look, getting it to process the message that we're trying to process, and trying to finalize what kind of rewards and exclusive content that we want on the table for our Patreon users. So I'll talk a little bit about that in a couple minutes here. And they are, of course, all the great ways that you can help support this show. as I said, this is going to be a state of the podcast address where we update you, or where I update you about the happenings of Everything is Awesome and some other things. And we kind of do these milestone shows where I do something fun or special or whatever, and we try to do a live show for our actual podiversary when it comes to Everything is Awesome. And I only recently started doing things for the anniversary of my career of podcasting. And that included, I mean, we kind of missed the mark on this one, but I did that on purpose. So from now on, every year, whether it's an actual day that we air the episode of Everything is Awesome, or it ends up being a bonus podcast day, we're going to issue out a state of the podcast address. Maybe it's going to be more personal, where you catch up on my life. You learn more about Kev. You learn more about the podcast and what else is going on. So I think I've said that 3 times now in the 5 minutes that we've been doing the show. So the first major bit of news that I have when it comes to Everything is Awesome is, for the last about 2.5 years, we have been part of the CoreTempArts podcast network. And without burying the lead, as of July 31st, that will be our last day as part of the network. That means that this episode is our last episode that's part of the CoreTempArts podcast network. And I can't thank that network enough for allowing us to be part of it. Karly, who we've had on the show, she runs the network, does a great job with it. She's a great person. All the shows there are great. Chris Revel, who hooked us up with the network, is, obviously he's doing a different version of his show now that he's a new proud papa and whatnot, but he's still doing his show, and he's still part of that network. And everyone that I've met through that network has been great, and we've had some great, conversations, whether they've been on air or not. What led to the decision to leave the network, and I truly, truly wanted to commit to 3 years, and Karly didn't know that. I didn't tell Karly that I wanted to commit to the 3 years. That was just kind of my own personal goal. And that would have been sometime in January of 2019, mid-January, right around our anniversary. That would have been our 3-year mark. And I contacted Karly about almost as of this recording, about a month ago, maybe a little bit more. And I dropped the news on her that I was planning on leaving the network. And it's, like I said, I love the network. I love the opportunities that I had with this network. And there was no fault of anyone but myself that I felt it was unfair to be part of the network, because I was really bad at sending my episodes in. And for the most part of 2018, I didn't record a lot until June. And that was for some mental issues, some fallouts I had with other shows and whatnot. So, because of the lack of posting and the lack of supplying content to CoreTempArts, which I don't think Karly actually cared about, but for me, I know that I'm not able to do the work she needs me to do in any kind of timely manner, if at all. I'm doing more with other projects when it comes to podcasting and comic book reviews and stuff like that. So it just, to me, felt unfair to be reaping the benefits of being part of the network without doing any of the work and without supplying the work to her. So that's why we're leaving. And I want to thank anyone that came on to listen to this show or comes for CoreTempArts that wanted to, that listened to the show. Thank you for hopping on to the show, and thank you for being a CTA family member and supporting the network and supporting a show on that network. Hopefully you follow us over to our next adventure, which we'll get to in a second. You can always find this show on awesomepodcast.com. You can always find us on Twitter at RealAwesomePod or on Facebook.com/RealAwesomePod. You can always find me on Twitter at ThatNerdyKev. And as kind of my official parting words to you guys who may be part of the CoreTempArts podcast network, or maybe a listener that came from there, parting words that I have are simply, they're silly. You do you, I guess. We live in a weird time right now where, especially specifically in the United States, depending on which way you swing, it's not a happy time in this world, and this entertainment is a release from that, and hopefully for an hour a week you guys listen to me and my guest babble on, and hopefully we give you that release for an hour. If not, there's plenty of shows on the CoreTempArts podcast network to help you with that. And for those that still can't figure out how to find a release, or for those that are feeling negative or have negative energy and, for lack of a better term, like to troll people, I want you to take that energy and use it for something else. And for people who can't find that somewhere, take the hatred, or the negative energy, take and all that stuff, and I want you to use it for good. Use it for something positive. Say something nice to somebody. Start your own podcast. Share your voice. It's so easy to do in 2018 to share your voice. Everyone's voice matters. And of course, if you're someone who wants to strangle little kids in the backyard, don't listen to me at all. This isn't for you. This is for people who want to spread good in the world and want to spread positivity in the world. You have the power to do that. And if you're someone who's a troll who likes to talk down to people and make fun of people for doing something that they're passionate about and that they love, take that energy and reverse it, man. And maybe you won't smile all the time, but you'll smile more. And smiling's infectious. And it's so important to me that you go find that creative thing and you embrace it, whether it's you being creative yourself or you being entertained by something creative. I've been on both spectrums. I do both spectrums. I create podcasts. I listen to podcasts that make me smile. So just find your thing, man. And that's all I can say. You do you. Be happy. Spread positivity. We need it more than ever. Worldwide even. With that being said, thank you once again to the CTA family, the CoreTempArts family, and you can find them at CoreTempArts.com. Find all the shows that are part of that network there. Continue to listen to those shows, and hopefully you continue to come on our adventure here with Everything is Awesome. And that adventure now includes the That's Entertainment Podcast Network. You've probably heard me talk about it at least once on an episode that I did about the That's Entertainment Podcast Network. You've probably heard me mention it when we talk about Patreon, how the Patreon is going to support that network in this show. It's the network that I run. We have Bullies Keep Out as a full-time show airing bi-weekly, every other week, whatever that terminology is. We have the Ladies Who Rant, that airs weekly on Fridays, and they're the two permanent shows that are part of the network right now. The Zomcast is evolving. It's always evolving as I work in the background with it, and it's once again evolving into something else. And I think I can safely say probably 2019 is when it's going to resurface again. But we have more things coming down the pipe. I'm currently developing for the That's Entertainment Podcast Network 3 more shows, and some of them I'm going to be part of, some of them I'm not, save for maybe like a producing role. And it's going to be, and we're going to have more official announcements on the 1st, I think. That you'll get through Twitter and Patreon and stuff like that. And I'm pretty excited for for That's Entertainment, the podcast network, and what we're planning on doing with that, and what we want to do with that, with your help, with the fan support, with the listener support. But we're going to move Everything Is Awesome as there. It just makes sense. There's no reason to not have it there. I'm working in that space anyway. It's literally just a setting that I have to flip on to make it come over to that network page. So it's been a long time coming to come home, for lack of a better term. And I don't regret the time that we spent with CoreTempArts. It was a learning experience. I learned a lot from being part of a network. And without even knowing it, Karly has helped me learn how to run a network, or at least start a network. And I'll teach myself how to advance it past where we're at now. But it was the natural evolution to this show. I think everyone kind of knew what was eventually going to happen. But I had plans that I wanted to enact, and part of that involved waiting at least 3 years before I moved off CTA, and I don't want to get into what those plans were because they're obviously not happening now. But I'm happy to announce that we are going to be still part of a network, and we're going to be part of That's Entertainment Podcast Network, and with that launch on 8/1, I'm looking into expanding some things, and perhaps not necessarily rebranding the network, but maybe switching up how we present the network on the shows. Right now there's a network tag at the front end and the back end, and then there's the image on the iTunes art. So I'm looking into, I don't know if it's going to be ready for August 1st, but I'm looking into switching that up a little bit too. Always like to evolve and change things and make the listening experience better. And maybe the way we do things with promoting the network is a little too lengthy. So we're looking at options for hopefully for implementation. Sorry guys, I'm super tired. It's almost 3:00 in the morning my time. I was a guest on a podcast, Temple Geeks, and then they were a guest on my podcast, and conversation probably lasted about 3 hours total between the two shows, and I'm on my crash, if you will. So this is going to be not a full hour, but probably about a half hour. Anyway, so I apologize for stumbling over my words and whatnot. Take a sip of water for the work, man. So we are going to That's Entertainment Podcast Network. We have updates going on there. The Patreon will go live on the 1st, hopefully, knock on wood, of August, to go along with the Everything Is Awesome joining the network and some of the announcements we're going to make. I can make some announcements now. Right now, if you go to thatentertains.com/network, you'll see a couple different shows that are up there that say coming soon or new or whatever. That's obviously going to change a little bit. The Awesome Pop Culture Minute, which was my way to involve Everything Is Awesome on the network. I don't know what I'm going to do with that because Spearmint has evolved into something else. And we've once they evolved into Headliner, we kind of stopped working together. And if I'm being honest, I loved the idea of Spearmint. It was like a mobile version of what we were doing with Zencastr. But Spearmint was never the right fit for Everything Is Awesome and for me. It wasn't a long form thing, and I can't shut up. And the quality wasn't necessarily where I wanted it to be, as far as how it sounded like a phone conversation. It sounded like both people were on the phone, host and guest. And maybe that was user error, I don't know, but it never worked the way I wanted it to work. So we're not. So I don't think we're going to be affiliated with Spearmint anymore, because honestly, Spearmint is no longer exists. They go by Headliner now. The Headliner thing that they're doing with video and whatnot seems amazing, and I would love to try and figure out how to utilize it, maybe. But as of now, there's no plans on me utilizing Headliner. There's no official capacity that we're working together anymore. I am looking at other options for the Pop Culture Minute. I would love the idea for that was to always be a like anywhere from 1 to 5 minutes long, and be aired not necessarily on iTunes, but strictly on thatentertains.com slash thatentertains.com/network. I would love to see that be a show that airs 3 days a week, 2 days a week, something like that. And it's just me hopping on and spouting whatever I want to talk about for a couple minutes a day. So I'm it's not retiring quite yet. I just don't know what's happening with it. If there's anyone out there that has suggestions, please let me know what you think we should do with the Awesome Pop Culture Minute. You can let me know on Twitter at ThatNerdyKev. You also see the Batman on Fat Man show. There was an idea I had for that. We actually recorded an episode with that, and it did not turn out exactly how I wanted it to turn out. So that's kind of going back into redevelopment. And I got to sit down with some people and talk with them about what they. I just want to workshop that show a little bit. But I am honestly hoping to have Batman on Fat Man launched in 2018 still. I would love to have that be a 2018 show. But out of everything I'm developing, that's probably second or third to last. Maybe it's probably right in the middle of a list of things that I want to get done, and we'll get to that in a second. Boys Keep Out is going strong as a bi-weekly show on Mondays. That's nothing's really going to change with that. The only thing I'd like to see with Boys Keep Out happen in the future, I would love to see, because right now the way it's recorded is it's either Dana recording with a interview with another guest, or her recording her side of the conversation and then me recording my side of the conversation, because it's hard for us to mesh our schedules together. I'd honestly like to see that become something that's more independent for me. If I'm being honest, I am an ambassador for Boys Keep Out. I believe in their message wholeheartedly, and I'm willing to support them and edit the show and produce the show with my full ability. I feel like I am not a subject matter in some of the things that we talk about, subject matter expert, I should say. And I think Dana gives very good information when she talks about our subjects that we talk about. So I know she wants the co-host aspect of it, and for right now I am doing it. I'm willing to do it, but if I'm being 100% transparent and honest, by the time that we talk again and do the next State of the Pod address, I'm hoping that that show evolves to the point where I'm strictly working on the background of that show, and maybe chiming in as a guest here and there. I think that show has a lot of potential and a lot of strength that, as far as an on-air personality, does not need me for. After that, on the site, we have Convos with Kiddos. And that is a show that is with my kids and I super want to do that in 2018. That's a show that basically just requires me having the studio set up, and we don't have it set up right now. Now, I have a temporary setup I moved my temporary setup from a corner of a room to a half of a room, a different room, that I actually have the fans on right now, and I don't think you can hear them in the background. If you do, I apologize, but it's hot. I can't have the fans off in a Florida room where the sun beats down on it. But I think I have potential to make this like where I can have some in-studio guests and in-studio recordings. So maybe we won't do the traditional recording with individual microphones and the mixer and stuff, but we'll have the blue snowball up, and I would really love to go forward with Convos with Kiddos and have my kids on doing it. Would be like, at most a weekly show, probably a bi-weekly show, but at most weekly, probably not much longer than about 15-20 minutes. Would be a very short show, I think, at least, because they're kids. They don't have long attention spans, but I really enjoy the things that we have recorded together, and I'm excited to see what we do with that. After that is on the site, I believe, is the Ladies Who Rant, and right now they're kicking it mainly weekly. it's July is budget time for me for my day gig, so it's really really hard. I found out to keep up with the things that come with the festival and starting comic book reviews on thatentertains.com and keeping up with some of these shows. And me is getting them to me with perfect amount of time. It's just a matter of having a minute to edit them. And honestly, this episode's dropping late. Their episode right now is a day late. I'll probably get it up Sunday. I'll get it up. It's just we got a lot going on, and we're getting out of budget time. I feel like I always have an excuse, and you know what, maybe I do, and you might not enjoy it, but it's a legitimate excuse. It's free funny. Part of the Patreon is to help reimburse for some stuff. So hopefully, if our Patreon is starting to reimburse us for stuff, there can be more time to work on all this stuff and get it out in a more timely manner. But we'll get to that Patreon in a couple minutes here. So, late to the game, ... of Thrones. Boy, do I want to do that podcast again with Mike. I really loved that podcast, and just sitting down thinking about watching Game of Thrones again makes me want to do that podcast. And if for anything else, mainly just to make up an excuse to sit down and chat with my best friend, once a week. So I would love for that show to come back, but we're both pretty busy with other activities, and right now the focus on That's Entertainment Podcast Network isn't necessarily about getting as much Kev on the air as possible. I should have started out with this, but the network for me, a lot of the shows that I have on here that I haven't even gotten to yet are shows that involve me, and they are, while I was kind of dared to maybe put them on the front burner, they are back on the back burner because the last thing we need is another white nerd talking about things. And I don't know how that sounds. To me, it sounds perfectly acceptable to say that. Because the purpose of the That's Entertainment Podcast Network, and I'm trying to find the exact phrasing that I like right now, but for now is inclusive. I want this network that we're about to join and that has been around for these other shows. I want it to be an inclusive network, regardless of gender and race and sexual orientation and religion and stuff like that. I want us to be an inclusive network. I want voices that matter to be represented. And I guess technically right now, we're doing a good job at that, as far as we actually, if I'm being honest, primarily have been a female-driven network with our two shows that are actively posting. With Everything Is Awesome, it becomes a one male-centric hosted and then two female-centric hosted shows. So there's some wriggle room that I think the other shows that we're developing are going to kind of help even out and whatnot. But that's the purpose of this network, is to not necessarily make it with thousands and millions of views, but to be an inclusive place. That is super important to me. We live in a crappy world, and for people that don't look like me, it's even crappier. So I want a safe space for people, for listeners, and for podcasters to come to. And I'm hoping that That's Entertainment Podcast Network is a place that people feel like they can turn to for their entertainment or to create. That's another thing that should be very clear, is that That's Entertainment Podcast Network, I love this line that the MaximumFun.org network uses. It is creator-owned and listener-supported. What that means is I don't own any of the shows except for Everything Is Awesome, because I am the creator of Everything Is Awesome. But when it comes to the Ladies Who Rant, I am, I guess to some degree, a co-creator, but I am primarily a producer and editor on that show. The girls own that show. Bully Keeps Out, that's Dana's show. She owns that show. I help the podcast, and so that's important for me to, even though they might be in-house shows, they are creator owned, versus being owned by the production company. What's next? We just talked about late to the game. So yeah, I would love to bring that back, but if that comes back, honestly, it's probably a very late 2018 thing or a 2019 thing, and it's going to be very either random when we do it or monthly or something like that. If I'm following the page correctly in my mind, the next show is the Muppet Show. That's another one that is likely a 2019 addition to the network. It's a show that, I mean, you can look at some tweet history between Jeff Stormer and I and some other people about that show. It was basically a dare to start that show, and I want to start it. I want it on our network. I don't know if I'm going to host it. As of now, I have to, but I don't know if I'm going to host. I don't know if I'm the person to host it. I know Jeff is not busy. He's too busy to host it. And I fear that I'll be too busy to host it. So I think that's one that I would love to produce, have on the network, share co-created status with Jeff, myself, and whoever ends up being the person that ultimately runs that show and books the guests and stuff. So the Muppet Show will likely be a 2019 show. I think I do have it listed as a 2018 show, but I don't think that's in the cards with other developments that we're making. I believe the next show listed is Once Upon a Time, and that is one that I don't know has ever been officially announced that it's on hiatus, and I don't know how long it's on hiatus for. Might even be done. I was trying to work with Team West Coast and figuring things out, but full disclosure, I have not heard from them. I've sent them 2 emails, and they haven't responded. I know they're busy with career and life, so I haven't pushed too much about it, but I'm going to do actually probably on Monday, which is the 30th, have a final form of communication to the Patreon users of Once Upon a Wine, and a final communication also, to them. I think they are actually Team West Coast as of this recording. They're going on vacation, so again, I don't expect a full response, but if I'm being honest, what I want to see come from Once Upon a Wine is it to come back in some shape or form. I had presented the idea of taking it over, and if you follow the history of that show correctly, it started off as a show that Mike and I did called the unofficial Once Upon a Time podcast. Eventually, Mike and I decided to stop doing it, and I had passed it off to Team West Coast, Aaron and Ace, to do it, and they turned it into what it is today. And what it is today, which only aired in its current incarnation a handful of times, was, I think, a super great concept for a show. Unrehearsed, scripted reads and stuff of fan fiction, and I love that concept. And I'm sure there's other shows that do that concept. And I still stand by the fact that I want them to do it. I wholeheartedly believe that they should do it. But life and work, I think, got in the way for them. And I believe some other things that I'm not privy to talk about got in the way. I wish I had more information about that show because people that I consider very good friends of mine have just been too busy. Understandably, I'm not faulting them. I understand that they're busy, but I just haven't been able to connect with them. We haven't been able to talk and chat and whatnot. And West Coast life is very different than East Coast life, so I understand that things are busy. I wish I had a better answer. I don't have a better answer to give you guys. If I'm being honest, my plan is to potentially reboot it until they're ready to claim it back. As I said, it's creator owned, and I take a small claim of it being my creation because it started out with me. If you look at the history of that show, it starts out with me in that feed, but largely that show belongs to Aaron and Ace. So I want their blessing. I have not gotten their blessing. I don't have enough info right now to say what I want to say about that show. If it is my hope that there's a blessing to take that show and develop it into something that can still be produced and presented to you guys in the fashion that they had started to do most recently, in that scripted fan fiction, unrehearsed setting. I think I can make it work. I think I can make it happen here. And I only want to do it until they're ready to take it over, or until they're ready to do something else. There's hope that they are going to continue in the podcasting world. I hope that I'm lucky enough to be part of that with them, and air it on our network one day. I'm super grateful for everything that team did for me in that show and this network. I am, they gave Crudehammer Studios, our production company, the opportunity to be listed as an associate producer, or what I think that's in association with production company, on Once Upon a Time, the rock opera. The first kind of real credit that we got on IMDb. So I'm really, really grateful for that opportunity. I know I would have loved to do more with them, but being on different coasts was really difficult to make that happen. So best of luck to whatever they're working on. I hope to catch up with them real soon, because they both are genuinely people that I miss having a conversation with. So I hope to talk to them soon, but I also wish them the best of luck in family and work, because I know life is going to get super busy for them soon. Next show on the list of shows is, I believe, that's right, a psych recap podcast, which is something that me and this dude, Craig from Take Two, previous guest of the show, had talked about doing. And we just haven't had time to make it happen yet. It's again, that's another one that I would say, there's really very low pressure to get it started, because of time and whatnot. So if I want, my wish would be to get it done, and up and running in 2018, but it likely will be a 2019 show again, and it says it right in the title. It's a psych recap show. So, hopefully we can bring that show to life, sooner than later, but if the earliest would be end of 2018, if I had to guess. And the last show that's listed on the site, if I'm reading it correctly, is the Zomcast, which has had a huge history. And here we are with that. That is, I'm going to, once we're caught up on some things with That Entertains and the Patreon and the network, we're going to be uploading the back catalog of that show, because it's an active show. Not Patreon exclusive. It will be uploaded to everyone, for everyone to listen to. We already have season 1 up, which was Matthew, Nicholas, and I, the creators of that show. When we'll eventually be caught up to where we aired all the archive stuff. I'm gonna upload it at chunks at a time. No real schedule, just kind of posting it up. Once that's all caught up, I am going to take a serious consideration of what we're going to do with the remaining audio that we have, of what was, I guess we'll call it the new Zomcast, with the previous the last co-host that I did the show with. There was some concern as to the legality of using that audio. And I believe that what we're going to do is we'll likely I'll air an episode of the Zomcast once we're caught up, to officially announce what we're doing with the old audio. Long term, and that's just short term plans, because I honestly don't know what I'm going to do with the audio. We have probably about 8 to 10 episodes recorded that never aired, and most of it's just like recapping really cool movies from yesteryear, and there's some topics in there and stuff, and there could be potential content that we could use. I'm working alongside of trusted colleagues and people that maybe know the law a little bit better than I do to figure out exactly what we can do with that audio, what I want to do with that audio, and whatnot. That's short term though. Long term, in 2019, the Zomcast will become an actual play podcast, and it was going to relaunch in June as that, with a concept of seasonal based learning how to play podcasting through the horror genre, learning how to play role playing games through the horror genre and podcasting. But we in the process of wanting to get into game design and thinking of a zombie game, I found on Kickstarter a new zombie role-playing system that I actually really enjoy, and I would, before I go on and develop my own, I want to see what this system is capable of. And I don't know if I'll GM it, but I really like the idea of using Zombie World as the game we use to run a long-form campaign through the Zomcast, set in a zombie apocalypse. So that will be launching. That product is expected to be done, completed, shipped, and in my hands by Q4 of 2018. So I should have it by the end of the year. If that's the case, I have to put together a team of performers to play the game and perform the game, and decide on a schedule and whatnot. And so I would say latest is summer of 2019. Earliest would be spring of 2019 is when the Zomcast will be relaunched, and only slightly rebranded to be part of the actual play world with that show. So the Zomcast isn't going anywhere. It's just going to go through. It's going to get caught up on some creator-owned episodes from yesteryear, possibly getting into some of the newer stuff, depending on what the official decree is from the higher ups, and then we'll rebrand into volume 2 of the show, which will be the actual play, and we'll actually go to, for the first time in I think ever for any of my podcasts, we'll go back to episode 1, and we'll start from episode 1, because it's a total abandonment of what the show was before. So that's kind of the plan for the Zomcast. It is a That's Entertainment Crude Humor Studios show. Will always be a That's Entertainment Crude Humor show. The only thing that will be ever affecting that show are decisions made by Matthew, Herb, Nicholas Reed, and myself. We are the creators, and we have final say of what happens with that show, if I'm being honest, and I need to talk with them to see what they feel about the future of that show. I know that they are happy to have it go on. We've talked about that. I've always gotten their approval to keep on doing the show. Always had asked them to come back to it first, and if they said no, they said go do it with somebody else. So that's what we've done over the years. That wraps up what's listed on the That's Entertainment Podcast Network site at thatentertains.com/network. Now, we are developing 3 new shows. I don't want to get entirely specific with them quite yet, but I can give you a general idea of what we're doing. We have a project that I'm working on with Jeff Stormer that will be part of the network probably in August or September of 2018. He's kind of going in through the middle of not rebranding, but a re-imaging of artwork and sounds and music and stuff. So, I'm kind of waiting for him to finish up what he's doing before I finalize that stuff. Still have to nail down a format, whether it's going to be weekly, bi-weekly, or a monthly show. But it's a show that's going to be related to Party of One podcast. So, and I'm developing that as part of the network for sure. I plan on putting it in That's Entertainment Podcast Network, but I don't know. Because of the co-production with Jeff and Party of One, it may not be subject to the same rules and offers that we can do with some of the other shows. There'll be many more details come the end of the summer, early fall when it comes to that. We're also developing a Star Wars podcast, and it's neat because as we're developing it, it's kind of blending into this show that's part real life of people just sitting around talking about Star Wars news and creating our own little fiction within the Star Wars universe. And it definitely would be considered Legends territory, not actual canon, but Legends, and even that it's fanfic. So we're creating our own little fiction to the podcast, while generally it being a news site, basically a news podcast. So I'm pretty excited about that one. I've wanted to do a Star Wars podcast for a long time now, and I'm finally developing one, and we're going to do a lot of cool things when it comes to that. Book of the month clubs, maybe, or book club, maybe. There's ideas that I have to talk about and clear and whatnot, but definitely stay tuned. That I'm hoping that one sounds like it's going to also be September is when we start it. So stay tuned for that. That should be a super fun time. And then the last thing I'm recording, again, I can't get into super details about it, but very generally speaking, it is a true crime type of podcast. Working with some other members of the West Coast team to develop this true crime type of podcast. So we're in the very early stages. The way this one's going to work is likely going to be 10 to 13 episodes long for the first season. I think we're going to air a couple, like 1 or 2 episodes at once, and then let the rest of the season air on a weekly basis. And it's, like I said, I can say it's true crime, and I can say fictional world. They're the two things I can say. So it's pretty neat, and everyone's on board, and I think everyone's started doing their thing. So we'll 100% catch up on that podcast when it's time. I want to be a 2018 podcast, but I feel like production will start on 2018, and then it will launch in 2019, if I had to guess, as a weekly podcast, and it will be seasonal based. So hopefully we can time it to where we are recording and releasing it in time for the next season and whatnot. Man, I've babbled on for 48 minutes already. I thought we were going to be under an hour, and I think part of that is because I'm super tired and I know I am stumbling over things, so I apologize in advance. Very final thing I'll leave you on is Patreon. Our Patreon hopefully will be fully launched as of August 1st, 2018, and we'll be at patreon.com/thatentertains. If you go there now, you can see that it's strictly for the That's Entertainment Podcast Network. It gives an opportunity for us to be super inclusive and give voices to those who are not able to get voices out there in the world. We are going to have, I still need to go through the goals and set the goals up, but we have the body of it done. We have the rewards. The rewards range from being on the thank you page / a shout out to spoilers if this stays in. I just fell asleep for a hot second. The rewards are going to be like the thank you page and a shout out on the website or on the podcast. You get swag like buttons and t-shirts, and be a guest on the show, and play games with us, and a bunch of different swag and prizes and whatnot for our Patreon. So check that out at thatentertains.com/Patreon. The point of the Patreon is to help cover the fees that we have to run the show, and that's mainly hosting fees. But we get beyond that goal, then we're going to have money for advertising, and I would ultimately like to have a small, bank of money that will be used to upgrade certain things that may need upgraded. So, for instance, if the ladies who rant have a microphone that breaks, we can replace it with an emergency fund and whatnot. So, go to patreon.com/thatentertains to read all about our network and how it can be used to help us. Guys, I'm pretty exhausted. So I'm going to keep this part of this short. So thank you once again for listening to Everything is Awesome. Make sure you rate and review on iTunes. Make sure you share us with your friends and word of mouth recommendation. Beyond that, you can support us on Patreon and all that fun stuff. Make sure you check us out on Twitter at RealAwesomePod, Facebook.com/RealAwesomePod. You can find me on Twitter at ThatNerdyKev. And of course, we're on AwesomePodcast.com. Make sure you check out CoreTempArtsPodcast.com. This is our last official week with CoreTempArts, but please keep them in your mind and heart when you're looking for a new podcast, and check out CoreTempArts.com. That's about it. You can find me on Twitter at ThatNerdyKev. That's where I do most of my chatting with. And that's it, guys. Normally we do a call of action here, and I am far too tired to do it because I keep nodding off as I'm talking. So this is going to be a fun episode to edit. But what I want you to do for our call to action is just make sure you are calling your representatives for the things you believe in, and if you need scripts and a list of things that need representation for. You can go to 5calls.org. 5calls.org is what I use to make my phone calls. And they give you a script. They tell you who to call. You can track it on your phone to figure out how many times you've called, if they answer the phone or whatnot. It's such a great utility to help get your voice heard in the most important way possible, and that's with your state representatives. So if you live in the United States, you're not happy with the way things are going, find that thing that you are passionate about. Make sure you're using 5calls.org is what I'm trying to say here, and they will help you read a script and call on matters that you didn't even know existed, I guarantee it. And they'll help you, just get your voice heard from your state representatives. Guys, I apologize for this episode, especially as we near the hour mark here, because I didn't want it to be this long, and I also know that I fell asleep a handful of times at the end here. So this is going to be a fun edit, but you know what? Thank you once again to CoreTempArts Podcast Network and any listener that came to us from them. Hopefully you stay with us as we go to That's Entertainment Podcast Network on thatentertains.com/network. And hopefully I see you supporting us on patreon.com/thatentertains or leaving 5-star reviews. Or guys, I'm so tired. I don't know what I'm mixing together. Thanks for listening. I'm Kev. You can find us on awesomepodcast.com, CoreTempArts.com. All right, we're gonna have to clean up the end of this though. So thanks for listening. And I hope to see you on the other side of podcasting in the podcast network. We've been awesome.
Thank you for listening to the CoreTempArts Podcast Network. To listen to more CoreTempArts shows, visit CoreTempArts.com.